Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to look at the new Bound on the Run 50th anniversary edition, which came out in various formats. I've been trying to cut down on vinyl purchases recently, but I couldn't resist this one. I've never actually owned a spanking brand new copy of Bound on the Run, so when I saw this, I had to get it. This is an American track listing with the American back cover, so including Hell and Wheels. I've got several copies. Maybe my original copy was new in the UK, but I've certainly never had a new American copy and not a sealed version. And I picked up the CD because I'm most interested in these underdubbed mixes, or I was most interested in those, and that's what prompted me to get reacquainted with the album. And I think what the beauty of this release has done is it's, as my friend Dave Costello said, it's given a new lease of life to an album which has been somewhat overplayed over the years. And I think we're all guilty of that. Perhaps overplaying it, perhaps underplaying its significance, saying it's overrated. A lot of people going for Ram, for example, versus Bound on the Run. But when you come back to this album, it is quite glorious to rediscover it, and just to rediscover what a glorious, superb set of songs it is. The packaging is nice on this reissue. So we've got the words, and we've got a double-sided Linda poster here, which I won't open up, but the A side, the front side is the same as the album poster, and then the original album poster, and then the other side is just more Linda McCartney Polaroid snaps, and this is the track listing. So you've got the album, and you've got the underdubbed mixes, which is basically Jeff Emmerich doing a rough mix of most of the songs, all of the songs excluding Hell and Wheels, which wasn't intended for the album initially. So I'll come to the track listing in a minute, because it's quite interesting to talk about where some of it was recorded and which bits were recorded in London. So this is a nice companion piece now that it's come out to the original archive book, which I have, the deluxe book, which came out in 2010, I think, and it was really good value for money back then. I think I seem to remember I paid about £30 for it, which is very good value considering what you get. 2 CDs, a DVD, and a 120-page book. I mean, no complaints there. And now, of course, the latest deluxe set will set you back 200 quid at least, if not 250 probably. So a nice companion to that. And also in 1998, I think it was, the 25th anniversary, this came out, which was very interesting because it contained some interviews with the people who were featured on the front cover. So you got, all of them were interviewed. I seem to remember Kenny Lynch, John Conte, Christopher Lee, James Coburn, Paul, Linda and Denny, and Michael Parkinson. And of the people on the cover now, unfortunately only Paul McCartney and John Conte on the far right there are still with us, following Denny Lane's sad death a couple of months ago. So anyway, now I'm going to talk about, also before I start on the music, the Jeff Emmerich book. I just reread the chapter on Bound on the Run, very interesting. He was there. I didn't know that he and Denny flew out to Lagos a day or two before the McCartneys to sort of suss out what was available out there. I thought they'd all flown out together, but not according to the book. Some hilarious stories from Jeff Emmerich about cockroaches the size of dinner plates. And all in all, it doesn't sound like Lagos is a very glamorous location at all to record in. Much to Paul's disappointment, probably because he was thinking this is a glorious summer sunny beach holiday. And although he did manage to get use of a country club for most mornings, which he used on most mornings throughout the 7 weeks. They were there for 7 weeks, but they were there mainly in the middle of a monsoon season. So torrential rain, open sewers in the roads, giant cockroaches, couldn't drink the tap water. All in all, a bit rough, but they stuck at it, and they, as we know, the 2 members of Wings had just left prior to the Lagos departure. And Paul, Linda and Denny made the best of a bad situation, and had a kind of slightly defiant attitude of, okay, let's let's do a bloody good album and sod them. If they want to leave, they're going to regret leaving because we're going to make the best ever album we've ever made. And that's basically what they did. And I was reading a recent review by Stephen Thomas Erlewine, which said the reason Bound on the Run, although Paul is the main star of the show, of course, the reason Bound on the Run has endured over these years is the very warm feeling of companionship that one gets from the sessions. And it's basically the three of them, Paul, Linda and Denny, with Jeff Emmerich engineering. And they do get a very good vibe together, and they're singing Glorious Wings 3-part harmony, which we know and love. And just before I mention the music again, I just want to say the cover and the back cover is, if we combine the two, I think it's Paul's best post-Beatles album cover by far. I don't think there's anything which even runs it close. I'm trying to think of a rival. But classic front cover, classic back cover, and I'm really glad they've used the back cover as the kind of main cover for this Underdubbed 50th anniversary mix. And I love the way the photos are shiny here on the white background, a bit like passport photos, and the shiny title there. Just really nice packaging, and within the two CDs actually are nicely packaged, because the first one is the original album cover and back cover, and the second one is I think it's got a page from Paul's passport, well, by the look of it, with a few stamps there from 1972 and 3, and a kind of white label sort of promo CD there. So nice packaging. I don't regret getting this at all, because it's not one of those Underdubbed mixes which I've just played once and put back on the shelf. I think I'm going to revisit this a lot. And some fans out there are divided about whether, did we want this? Do we feel ripped off having already got the Bound on the Run archive set, which didn't feature this? We're having to pay our money twice. But I think all in all, this is what I want as a fan. I want this kind of underdubbed, a bit like they did with Double Fantasy, John and Yoko, stripped down mix release of that without the overdubbed backing vocals and the horns. Very interesting to hear, and I wouldn't mind the same treatment, exactly the same treatment, for a whole host of other Beatles solo albums. So I think it's the way to go. But that's my opinion. Not everyone agrees, but it's a worthwhile release, and I think the underdubbed mixes are on the whole superb. Not to say that they replace the original album, they don't, and they're not better than the original album, but they're a very good companion piece. And in some ways they make you realise what a good groove they had, Paul, Linda and Denny, in Lagos, before the overdub came on, before the orchestration. So you can just hear them basically as if they're in the room with you in Lagos, jamming away, the three of them. Apparently there was no piano in Lagos, according to Terry Wilson, but I'm not sure if that's the case. And there's definitely an organ, because they play Let Me Roll It. I find it hard to believe a studio would have an organ and not a piano, but possibly. But then again, Ginger Baker had an ARC studio just down a few minutes away, which they went to record Picasso's Last Words at, and apparently that was a state-of-the-art studio. So there was a piano available there, presumably. So the reason I'm saying this, because there was a debate as to whether 1985 was recorded in Lagos or London, or started in Lagos and finished in London, which I think is quite likely. But Terry Wilson and others say that it was done in London because, and the evidence they give, is there was no piano in Lagos. So it's possible, but the official Bound on the Run archive edition says that all of the tracks on the album were recorded in Lagos and in London. So I don't know if that's true or not. And the same debate one can have for Jet. I think they did start to play around with it in Lagos, but maybe didn't get too far, because Jeff Emmerich says that they started it more or less afresh in London. But I like to think they would have had a go at all of the tracks in Lagos, even if they didn't use the backing track for every single track on the album. But anyway, I digress slightly. The jury is out there. We'll never know for sure, I suppose. So we start off with the title track. Well, obviously it's missing the Tony Visconti's glorious orchestration, and it's missing some slight guitar fills at the end of each line of the chorus and stuff like that. But it's really nice to hear, and I wouldn't be without it. And Mamunia, I didn't notice a great difference there, so not much to tell you about Mamunia, but no words. They've certainly turned up the guitar at the end of the song, and even slightly extended it, I thought. And without the orchestration, you can really hear Paul and Denny jamming and singing well together on this track, along with Linda. So I really enjoyed this track. I thought it was a very interesting companion piece to the album version. Jet is never been one of my favourites from Paul and Wings, but I really enjoyed hearing this sort of rough version without the horns. And just brought to the fore Paul's superb drumming, if nothing else. I think it really works without the saxes, the horns, and I just kind of got me back into the track, which is no mean feat because I'm never really a fan of it over the years. Bluebird, not too much difference I noticed here, although it hasn't got Howie Casey's superb sax solo. So you hear that instrumental section where the sax solo went, and just, if nothing else, just emphasises what glorious chord changes they are in this song. And they're not particularly straightforward chord changes. They're kind of a bit off-kilter and very lovely. And this song has always been a favourite of mine, but I've really got back into it now with this version. Not the album, and I will go back and listen to the album again after listening to these underdubbed mixes, because I'm presuming I'm going to really get back into it, because the words are just perfect to this song, and Linda's vocal response to Paul when he sings Bluebird, just wonderful, and Denny singing along as well. And they did this really well on Wings Over America, as we know. So that brings us on to Mrs. Vanderbilt. Not too much difference here, but again, without the sax solo. So you hear the strumming of the acoustic. Paul and Denny kind of strumming very rhythmically to this infectious song. And I think it's brilliant. Again, not too much difference, but nice to hear this version without the sax. 1985, well, this was an instrumental version at the time when Geoff Emerick did these rough underdubbed mixes. So without any vocal at all, but most of it intact, bar the orchestral arrangement. I know my friend Andrew Brooks said it misses the orchestral overdubs. Well, yeah, it does, because it's not the finished version, but it's very nice to hear this work in progress. And it's a kind of a moody space age instrumental, and I think it works really well. Could have easily gone out as an instrumental, as a kind of either a B-side or just as a straight instrumental. But I think Paul did the right thing to write some words to it at the end of the day. Picasso, probably the highlight of the whole album for me, because without Tony Visconti's orchestration, you can hear the germ of the idea of what Paul's trying to do. Is kind of make a song a bit like a Picasso painting, like bits of this and bits of that thrown together haphazardly to make into a song. And so you've got bits of Jet coming in here and bits of Mrs. Vanderbilt at the end, and just really nice chord changes you can hear without the French dialogue. Just hear it in its simplistic form, and very nice indeed. And I noticed the album, the new CD, gives a credit. Well, it doesn't give a credit, but it says it acknowledges that there are elements of the song Deo, which was written by Harry Belafonte and a couple of other people, I think. That song which goes, daylight coming and me want to go home. If you listen to very carefully the end of Picasso's last words, during the ho, hey, ho section, Paul sings Deo, and then Linda sort of answers him, daylight coming, we want to go home. You have to really listen to that to hear it, because I wouldn't have heard it unless I'd read in the sleeve notes, Deo is acknowledged, elements of Deo. And I said, which track is that? So I went back and really listened and heard it. So, and then the album, the underdubbed mixes, finishes with Let Me Roll It, and got this very amusing sort of single note, treble note, which appears early in the first few seconds. I'm not sure what that's doing there, but it was very funny. Very slightly different vocal to the finished vocal. A little bit sort of under-rehearsed, a little bit of a rough mix, as it's called. But very nice to hear Paul singing Palm of My Hand in a slightly different way to how he does on the original. So, as we know, it's a masterful song. So if nothing else, this album, I think will get me back into the original album, will make me reappraise it, and I say reappraise it because it was always great, and to make me realise again just how good it is. And people have been saying it's his best post-Beatles album, and when one listens to the underdubbed mixes, and I suspect when I go back to the album proper, it's going to be hard to disagree with that. So that was my take, and a wholly positive take on this new release. So thank you for watching. See you next time.